Hello, folks. This is Steve AB4EL. Happy Thanksgiving. Nothing in this episode is a promotion, nor is it a recommendation. Now, no matter where I look, at least in my online reading, the story that is there over and over and over, and actually has been very interesting over the last 4 days, was Sam Altman's sacking by OpenAI's board over Q-Star breakthrough seems to be a threat to humanity. Now, this guy got fired by the board of directors at OpenAI, and like immediately the other guy who's about equal rank that together with him started it, quit. And then the CEO of Microsoft got directly into it and said, we're hiring Sam. Something needs to be done about that board. And from what I understood when I was reading late last night, they convinced this guy to go back to OpenAI, and all the other, apparently, hundreds of people at the company decided, we're quitting too. And I read that things are going to go back to normal without the board. They're gone. They're going to get a new board, something like that. Remember what boards do. They oversee the, I'm going to say, business and ethical operation of the company, standing a bit outside of it. Make sure it serves whomever it is the board is serving. Remember, I'm an idiot running my mouth. But I noticed something interesting about this. So I'm reading this article here, and this guy, whoever he is, I have no idea. He says, my prediction is that a few weeks ago, the team at OpenAI, meaning led by this guy here, Altman, demoed either a machine that showed consciousness, otherwise known as AGI, artificial generative intelligence, but like a human has. And Sam, this guy, didn't immediately tell the board, and their feelings were hurt. Now, of course, he's poking fun. So a lot of these articles are a reiteration of other people's opinions. And I can see this is quoting from something. Ahead of Sam's firing, researchers sent the board a letter warning of a new AI discovery that could threaten humanity. And then they're saying here, and apparently you can see it on X, the day before Sam was fired, he gave this chilling speech. Is this a tool we have built or a creature we have built? Now we're getting to the crux of what I'm interested in. This timeline would add up with the recent discovery of Q-Star, which would be the project that seems to have generated human-like artificial intelligence. Well, when I looked at it, they seem to be picking from this article on Reuters, which is a news agency. OpenAI researchers warn board of AI breakthrough ahead of CEO ouster, sources say. So I think there's various people are commenting they're actually coming back to this particular article. There's two things I want to say about it. The previously unreported letter and AI algorithm were key developments before the board's ouster of Altman, the poster child of generative AI, the two sources said. Prior to his triumphal return on Tuesday of this week, he was fired like Friday, and by Tuesday he was back, and the board is history. And I'm going to guess the ones that instigated him they're probably gone too. It's just like Et tu, Brute? You know that one, don't you, from the Shakespearean play? The assassination of Julius Caesar. Prior to his triumphant return late Tuesday, more than 700 employees had threatened to quit and join back Air Microsoft and the CEO of Microsoft explicitly in solidarity with their fired leader. So there's like some kind of political warfare going on inside of the company. The sources cited the letter as one factor among a long list of grievances by the board leading to Altman's firing, among which were concerns over commercializing advances before understanding the consequences. And that implies that there may be some things that they have to keep secret and only show to, now I'm making this up, the FBI, the CIA, you got it? Reuters was unable to obtain a copy of the letter. The staff who wrote the letter did not respond to requests for comments. So they're saying that inside sources said certain things to them, but when they tried to track it down and get people to officially commit, after being contacted by Reuters, OpenAI would decline to comment and acknowledged in an internal message to staffers a project called Q-Star and a letter to the board before the weekend's events, meaning Friday and after. One of the people said, an OpenAI spokesman said that the message sent by longtime executive Mira Murati, who was made by the board to be in charge to replace Altman, alerted staff to certain media stories without commenting on it. So they're telling them that the secret warfare story has leaked out, and now it's world news. Now here's the point. This is the authors of the Reuters article. Some at OpenAI believe that Q-Star, pronounced Q-Star, could be a breakthrough at the startup search for what's known as artificial general intelligence. One of the people told Reuters, see, they got inside people. OpenAI defines AGI, artificial general intelligence, as autonomous. What is autonomous? Doesn't need anything to steer it or give it commands, able to figure out how to exist and act on its own. Autonomous. Theoretically, we're autonomous beings. As autonomous systems that surpass humans in most economically valuable tasks. And then they go on to expand on that. Now, what came to mind when I read that? You know, I read Slashdot. I skim the news headlines. Who got fired last year? engineer at Google fired for saying AI and is sentient. You see, they know what I'm talking about. March 2nd, 2022. Former Google employee Blake Lemoine, who last summer said the company's AI model was sentient, in other words, had become AGI in the vocabulary of OpenAI. The Google employee who claimed last June his company's AI model could already be sentient and was later fired by the company. Wait a minute. Does history repeat itself? Or does it just rhyme? Is still worried about the dangers of new AI. So when I'm reading about all this tussle that went on and exploded and went supernova and then calmed down in a space of 4 days and directly involved the CEO of Microsoft getting directly involved in the fight between the board who fired the guy who was the genius that figured it all out to start it, and the guy who was with him when they did it that said he was leaving, if that Altman was leaving, and then hundreds of people revolt and say they're going to get out. In that respect, it's a little different. But the action taken by the overseers in both cases is the same. The board fired the genius who led the effort to get AGI and thinks he achieved it, and Google fired a guy who dared to say that he thinks that's where they had arrived or are close. A year and a half to 2 years ago. Somebody's really afraid of it. No, not really. What they want to do is to be able to sell it for real to the highest bidder and get a lot of money and special privileges. That's a conjecture by an idiot running his mouth. Whether we're talking about Microsoft or Google, let's just take the two I've been mentioning. Both of them are under fire on the world stage in the EU, in India, in the United States Congress, and other places to restrain them, to cut their power, to regain control of what they think is their domain, instead of being trampled on by Google, Microsoft, and others, Amazon, and others like them. And they want to have a bargaining position, and it doesn't do any good for all the chips to be on the table ahead of time. Remember, I'm just an idiot running his mouth. I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. So another thing, I always like to look at authors. Who are the people saying these things? And as I said, I think this was the article that various people were actually citing and speculating from, just as I've been speculating by reading part of it. So I decided to see who. Now there's 3 names here: Anna Tong, Jeffrey Daston, and Crystal Hu. Now, 2 of these names are Chinese. and they're probably Americans. I'll remind you of something. When I worked at North Carolina State University in a certain department for a researcher in her group, one day this particular person who was doing a master's degree came back into the lab room from class. Well, we just had our first session of graduate level database design. She's a computer science major. There are 6 of us in the class. That's not unusual for graduate level courses to not necessarily, specialized ones, not necessarily having a lot of attendance. There are 6 of us in the course. We're all Chinese. I'm the only American. She was born in Hawaii. And that's what I mean by she's probably American. Now, the reason why I think I was attracted to her name, Anna Tong, I'm thinking of when I read that name, now I'm sure it's one of the 100 traditional Chinese family names. Just as that my coworker there had one of the traditional 100 Chinese family names. It reminded me of something. This is the way my mind works. This is what sentience means. What I'm going to show you. This is what they're worried a computer might be able to do. See a name like Anna Tong, and now here's what it is. I remember my father, he grew up in the same town I grew up in, and he was talking about how things were in the 30s. My grandfather owned a business, and my father and his brothers worked in those businesses growing up. And I remember him mentioning a certain laundry down on one of the main commercial streets in town where a person was apparently murdered in what generally was known as the Tong Wars. Now, my hometown may have had just that or 1 or 2 Chinese families. Now, her name is Tong. Wikipedia. Now, this is how my mind goes. This is AGI. This is what they're worried a computer might be able to do. Maybe not the best example, but the Tong Wars were a series of violent disputes beginning in the 19th century among rival Chinese Tong factions centered in the Chinatowns of various cities. When I lived in Philadelphia area, I had a job for a while at a small storefront company on Race Street, R-A-C-E Street. And if you talk to anybody in Philadelphia today, they will immediately say, you mean in Chinatown? Because that's where all the Chinese restaurants and kinds of businesses were and still are. Centered in the Chinatowns of various American cities, in particular San Francisco. Tong Wars could be triggered by a variety of inter-gang grievances, from the public besmirching of another Tong's honor to failure to pay full payment for a slave girl to the murder of a Tong member. Each Tong had salaried soldiers known as Bu Hao Doi, who fought in Chinatown alleys and streets over the control of opium, prostitution, gambling, and territory. The Tong Wars lasted until 1921. Go read it yourself. So when I saw her name, I kind of thought of that. And it registered something that my father's told me about a person who owned a Chinese laundry in my hometown that was murdered. And you notice what it says, and territory. Now, I'm going to tell you that my father also told me that what his father was worried about, now this is the same thing. This is about turf warfare. Isn't that what the whole thing inside of the OpenAI, that's turf warfare between various factions. The assassination of Julius Caesar 2,000 years ago was turf warfare. Different factions, and one is deciding the way to be the supreme is to get rid of this one here. My father also told me that and it was in the same vein as talking about that guy who got murdered, that my grandfather was most worried about one day receiving a letter from the Black Hand. Now, I'm going to explain the Tong stuff by giving you something that may be more familiar, since it was all explained in a series of important movies in the 60s and the 70s. You know, Al Pacino and the Black Hand. Now, what are the choices? The Black Hand, WW1, World War I, and what's the second one? The Black Hand Mafia. Where was my grandfather from? Italy. Black Hand extortion. He was afraid of receiving a letter that would have this imprint on the paper, demanding money. Black Hand, mano nera, is a type of Italian extortion racket. That's what the Tong Wars were talking about. That's why the Chinese guy, even in my hometown, was obviously in somebody's bigger territory and must have, I'm guessing, refused to pay the extortion, and they killed him. The Black Hand was a type of Italian extortion racket originally developed in the 18th century. Black Hand extortion was imported to the United States in the late 19th century, same time as the Tong Wars, with Italian immigrants. Black Hand was a method of extortion practiced by Italian immigrant gangsters of the something and the mafia, especially in the United States and Italian-American ghettos. Well, like the Chinese guy, the number of Italian immigrants in my hometown was a small fraction of the town's population. But there was two nearby cities that had significant Italiano immigrant populations. Turf warfare. Money. Do you think the stuff that those gangs are doing with the cyber attacks and hacking, do you think it's any different? Do you think it's any different than that? One day when I was in Philadelphia on Wayne Avenue, I was standing in line on a hardware store. I'll bet you I could even point to where the store was. I was standing in line waiting to buy something. There was a guy running the register. and two cops walked in and started to go past the line, and the guy running the register looked up at them and he said, no, 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 your buddies were here 2 hours ago. They already have the bag money. What do you think that means? I'm talking about direct personal experience. So let's find out who Anna Tong is. Anna Tong is a course. I know about. I read this. I like her curriculum vitae. Now, look at what she's writing, and listen to her background. Anna Tong is a correspondent. That means she writes articles for Reuters. Based in San Francisco. Oh, where did that OpenAI stuff? Oh, where she reports on the technology industry. All right, she specializes. She joined Reuters in 2023. Oh, that's this year. She's a newbie at it. After working at the San Francisco Standard, that must be a newspaper. What do you think? San Francisco Standard is an online news organization based in San Francisco, launched in 2021. Funded in part by billionaire venture capitalist Mitch Moritz of Sequoia Capital. This is Wikipedia. Big money. I need an independent news source to do something for me about why would a billionaire venture capitalist fund an independent online news organization? It might be information gathering in order to see where he should put more of his money. Who knows? First time I'm looking at this. I thought it was going to be a paper newspaper. Now wait a minute. As a data editor. What's a data editor? Is that another word for fact checking? What's a data editor? Tool for managing variables. No, that's not what they mean. Spreadsheet? Or she's the one that organizes all the information and data and whatever about some particular topic that they're interested in writing a series about. And then it looks like she got promoted to a correspondent. Previously, Tong worked at technology startups as a product manager and at Google, where she worked in user insights and helped run a call center. What are user insights? They're trying to figure out who you are so they can push ads at you on YouTube? What's Work Insights? Support.google.com. First time I'm looking at it. Work Insights is a reporting tool for Google Workspace, which gives you insights into the impact of your Google Workspace deployment. Using easy-to-read charts, you can see metrics on your organization's Google Workspace adoption, productivity, and collaboration, which must mean the electronic desktop means of team collaboration. That's a guess. By examining, pay attention to what she's an expert at. By examining your organization's Google Workspace usage metrics, you can identify success factors and problem areas. With these insights, this is Google. you can plan and implement initiatives to improve productivity, effectiveness, and engagement. What does that mean? That they put their heart in it and not just spend 4 hours a month actually working for Twitter? Remember what happened? Of your workforce. With adoption charts, you can see users' level of engagement with Google Workspace over time and where there might be adoption problems. For example, administrators and change management staff can track Google Workspace deployment. They're watching your every move. They're using computers to do it. In my mind, there's a big connection between that and why they would be afraid of AGI. Because they wouldn't need somebody like Anna Tong to be looking at that stuff and trying to figure out what it's telling her. The computer could do everything and not let humans know about it. And maybe even be authorized to fire people, hire people, demote people, change descriptions of jobs, change work plans, change research efforts, change without any human intervention. Now that last thing, which are just coming to my mind, is the reason why this story has become a whole big deal. And I think it's so appropriate that I found the Reuters article where Anna Tong is the lead correspondent on exactly this. And if you read her whole article, you'll understand why so many different people are quoting from it to give their opinions and insights. Let's see if she's Chinese. There's a picture of her. Can we get, all right, I'll do a Google search. Reuters, Twitter, LinkedIn. Do you think they'll show me her LinkedIn? Oh, very good. She wants people to see her. She got her degree at Harvard University. They're blotting out some stuff on here. You can't see her full experience. Volunteer experience, countercultural labs, 2015 to 2018, citizen scientist. Part of a community lab of volunteer scientists working on open source synthetic biology experiments. I'm working on real vegan cheese, producing real Chinese cheese proteins, pardon the slip, using microbes, not animals, open insulin, creating a generic version of insulin. Her languages are native or bilingual proficiency in English, professional working. She probably grew up speaking Chinese so she could talk to her grandma. That's the way it is in immigrant families. At home, my father only spoke Italian because his mother she didn't speak any English. And elementary proficiency in Spanish. I'll bet you her IQ is somewhere above 150. Easily. And that people have said, oh, wait a minute. Let's see what she did. What are her most recent articles? The one we're talking about. OpenAI researchers warn board of AI breakthrough ahead of CEO ouster. Exclusive. OpenAI investors considering suing the board after CEO's abrupt firing. Everybody got into it. OpenAI appoints a new boss as Sam Altman joins Microsoft. He got fired, and the CEO of Microsoft immediately got involved and said, he works here. Microsoft was a major co-investor at the beginning of OpenAI, in case you didn't know. Technology. OpenAI, Sam Altman discusses possible return moles. We're recapitulating the last 4 days. OpenAI CEO ouster was over a breakdown of communications, not malfeasance. He didn't tell him about AGI. He'd been keeping it a secret for a while. Chat GPT maker OpenAI oust CEO. We're going backward in time. Exclusive. OpenAI wants Chat GPT in classrooms. They want it to be right there in kindergarten. You see, they're talking about Biden and Z, talking about femtil. San Francisco patches over homelessness. You know how they cleaned up downtown San Francisco for the big boy from China to come in so he wouldn't. This is off topic, but I'm going to show you this happens all the time. San Francisco patches over homelessness, drug abuse for APEC, Asian Pacific Economic Conference. On a sunny Sunday before the world leaders were scheduled to gather at the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, the United Nations Plaza, one of the epicenters of San Francisco's drugs and homelessness crisis, wore a festive air. Until recently, a bustling marketplace of stolen goods and open-air drug trade. She wrote this article. I love the way she phrases things. The area has been spruced up with a brand new skate park. They didn't just clear them out, a skate park. And trainees from a dance company performed to a crowd. There was hardly a homeless person to be seen. Police officers and city officials watched too. On Tuesday, the day of Biden's arrival, so-and-so, who usually sleeps on the street as part of the downtown San Francisco, went to the APEC Convention Center. He said he noticed that the city had planted new trees along arterial markets and so on. She's really ripping the city up. Did you get the gist of what San Francisco did? Now let me tell you, when I worked for that internationally known, see, I like to relate all the things I've seen in my life that nothing changes. It's only the veneer looks different. I've already said that 3 or 4 times in what was the main theme about, what was the struggle at OpenAI, why did other people outside get so involved, and what's the difference between that and the assassination of Julius Caesar? So when I worked for that internationally known, internationally operating IT company, we heard news that the CEO of the company was coming to town and would be taken on a tour of the site, which was considerable, multiple buildings. And in the week, literally, up until the day before, all of the hallways where they were going to escort him and show him things, and he would meet people and whatever. All of those hallways in buildings that had been there since easily the 1950s and had hardly been kept up in terms of any kind of like paint or fixing the floors, all got new tiling and new paint jobs on the walls and trim and pictures on the wall. Think of a hallway that comes off an elevator, you turn left, and you walk 50 feet and you see a manufacturing line. Then you walk back to the elevator and the CEO is back in the elevator, but it's at a point where there's like a bend in the hallway. The hallway walking up to seeing the manufacturing area, all the way back to not the elevator, but beyond that to the crook in the hallway, and just a little beyond, had been totally refurbished. But beyond that, it still looked like it did unkempt for the last 20 years. You got that? Did you understand what I just said? San Francisco. A big shot's coming in from China. We need to dress this up and get rid of all that trash that's lying there in the streets. It's the same thing, folks. Thank you, Anna. See, I was just going through her most immediate articles and my mind wanders. There's one, in my head, there's one unified picture of the whole universe. So I want to say thank you to Anna. I'll bet we're going to see more from her. I would bet money on it. I would bet that she'll end up at some place like OpenAI as their #1 publicist. Steve AB4, just letting his mind wander, but brainstorming like hell on just events that have been going on for less than the past week and relating it to ancient history even, 2,000 years ago, that nothing changes, folks. Nothing changes. Only the veneer. Saying see you in 73.